You wanted steady income, a respectable cloak, and a job where numbers behave. Instead, you got a ledger, a cudgel-bearing escort, and a village that greets you like influenza. Congratulations, you're a medieval tax collector, the only professional who can empty a room by opening a notebook. Recruitment was suspiciously easy. The Lord Steward eyed your tidy handwriting and said, "You look like someone who enjoys arithmetic and minimal affection." You nodded because arithmetic is reliable and affection is famously over budget. He handed you a quill, a seal, and a pouch labeled change, which was aspirational. "Gather rents," he said. "Tithes, tolls, hearth tax, bridge tax, market tax, tax for crossing bridges to markets, and fees for asking why." You asked about danger pay. He smiled and steward. "Your uniform is not armor, never armor. That would send the wrong message, the right one. It's a good cloak that says official, and boots that say, I will walk through your mud like it's immoral. You also carry a portable desk, which is really a plank with ego. On it you arrange coins, weights, a tally stick, the Lord's seal, and a wax tablet for notes you plan to deny. You bring an escort of 2 men who look like they were born scowling and raised on rumors. Their job is to protect the ledger, because without it, you are just a person with opinions. Your first stop, the village of little resentment. Smoke rises politely from thatch. Chickens practice boundary violations. The mill pretends not to be loud. You set up by the well, unroll the parchment with a flourish that used to impress you, and announce, Collection Day. The crowd responds with the silence of people considering nonviolent solutions and shelving them for later. Customer 1 is a farmer who greets you by listing the year's disasters in ascending order of betrayal. Late frost, greedy crows, hail the size of excuses, a cow that looked at him wrong, and at the climax, you. He produces coins that have clearly lived adventurous lives. You weigh them because coin purity varies with monarch and mood. The scale tilts like a moral. You scrape off suspicious green. He glares as if you've insulted his ancestors. Short by 2 pennies, you say, cheerful like a warning bell. He fishes in his cap for a miracle and finds lint, a nail, and guilt. You glance at the escort. The escort glances at the cudgel. The farmer glances at his options and chooses future payment, which becomes a mark in your book shaped like a frown. Next client, the miller, who smiles with flour and confidence. He produces coin that smells of storage. You know the miller's trick. He collects grain as toll, then pays tax in coin after converting grain into beer, flour, friends, and arguments. You admire the hustle. Any adjustments? He says, meaning bribes. You reply, only reductions approved by Providence, meaning bribes are risky when the priest is within earshot. He laughs, producing a sound like grain surrendering. You add his payment to the pouch labeled change, which now weighs like a novel with no jokes. The priest arrives humming a psalm about obedience. He pays nothing because the church is exempt this century, week or hour, depending on which letters were exchanged between abbots and kings. He does, however, pay in advice. Consider mercy, he says, which is the spiritual version of, have you tried being nice? You mark his tithe column with a decorative flourish that means placed gently in God's file. He blesses you preemptively. A widow steps forward with 2 children and a face that makes arithmetic feel like heresy. She lays 3 small coins on the plank, rent for the Lord's land, hearth tax for the privilege of not being cold, and a crumb of hope for the remainder. You know the rule. Widows pay reduced rates if the steward remembers. You also know the unwritten rule. The village notices how you treat this exact human in this exact moment, and will decide later whether you deserve hinges on your door. You push 1 coin back. Rebate for roof repairs, you say, inventing a policy because consequences travel slower in mud. She mouths, thank you, as if it might break. You suspect this will cost you in a different column. You do it anyway. By midday, your plank is a landscape. Hills of coppers, valleys of silver, a cliff of IOUs. You break for lunch. Bread, cheese, the delicate taste of being disliked. A boy throws an apple core at the escort and misses you by a future. The escort stares him into another career. Afternoon brings the nobility of the cart. A merchant rattles in, complaining about wheel tax and tolls like he invented traffic. He produces coin realer than the priest's opinions. You stamp receipts with the Lord's seal and hand him a license to complain legally. He asks for a discount because the bridge was emotionally narrower than advertised. You record the remark under nuisances, a section where notes go to laugh. Then there's the Baron's cousin who arrives late and loud, insists on his bloodline, and declares his land immune by charisma. You recite the exemptions list: clergy, royal envoys, plague carts, weddings if accompanied by the actual bride, and people who outrank me on horseback, which he does not. He offers influence. You counter with math. He threatens to report you. You threaten to show your notes. We call this diplomacy. He pays carefully, with coins that feel touched by lawyers. The sun leans toward quitting time. You tally the day's harvest: coins, grudges, 3 promises, a chicken you didn't intend to accept, but is now part of the team. You pack up to leave when the Reeve, village head, manager of collective irritation, approaches with a list of complaints. The winter tax arrived in autumn. The bridge toll penalizes love because courtship requires crossings, and the market fee should include shelter from rain, or at least moral shelter. You nod in the universal language of, I will write this down where ink goes to relax. The Reeve departs with dignity and rocks in his pockets. Travel is the second job. You tramp to the next village, Muckford upon something, where the innkeeper charges you the collector's rate, which is 30% more than resentment. The room contains a bed, a window that negotiates with wind, and a chamber pot that has seen things. You count coin by candlelight, arrange tallies by payer, and sharpen quills like little spears against chaos. The escort snores 2 doors down. You dream of numbers applauding. In the morning, you cross a toll bridge your office collects. The keeper, who has never smiled and is determined not to start, bows to your seal and waves the fee with the flourish of a man saving the world 1 farthing at a time. On the opposite bank, a line of travelers glowers. You hear their thoughts. Of course the taxman doesn't pay the tax, and decide not to explain that the only person paying always is the taxman. You walk on, pursued by opinions. Some days are festivals. Festivals are taxes that smell like joy. Booths sell candied moods. Minstrels play 3 chords of optimism. Jugglers invent physics. You collect stall fees while everyone pretends not to notice. Drunks tell you jokes that end in, and then the tax collector fell in the river. And you laugh, because they pay. The Lord's men patrol the crowd like furniture with swords. The priest blesses livestock with the efficiency of a man charging by the blessing. You confiscate counterfeit coins that look right under torchlight and wrong under sunrise. You also seize dice weighted with lead and a goose that bites officials specifically. You consider knighting the goose. There are audits. Audits are religion for ledgers. The steward sits at a long table arranged for intimidation and asks you to explain variances with the calm of a man who will accept only numbers as nouns. You point to plague here, drought there. Merchants invented creative accounting everywhere. He taps the widow rebate. You brace for consequence. He sighs the sigh of a person who has also met widows. Note it, he says, which in steward means, do it again carefully. You exhale into your ribs. Bribery exists. It arrives as gifts. A pie that should be taxed under weaponized butter. A jug of wine labeled sample, a promise of a piglet in spring that transforms into a story in summer. You maintain a policy called visible gratitude, invisible accounting. You accept what won't corrupt you and refuse what will. This makes exactly everyone unhappy, which is the sign of good governance. Winter complicates collections. Roads dissolve into memoir. People pay in kind, sacks of barley, bundles of wool, a joke everyone swears is currency. You record values, warehouse goods in the Lord's barn, and hire guards who understand wool, the way poets understand wine. Mischief spikes, hens go missing, by accident. You invent a fine called coincident chickens, payable in either hens or better lies. Crime drops. Then there's the great assessment, when the king, inspired by hunger or war, decides to count everything. You measure fields with a rope that believes in knots. You list households, hearths, men who can wield a spear without weeping, women who can run the village without male supervision, all, and taxable dogs, hot debate, settled in favor of dogs who bite officials. You supervise scribes who write beautifully while asking you to spell turnip 6 different ways. The reeve tries to make his cousin's field smaller with words. You counter with rope. At sunset, you have a portrait of the village the way a butcher has a portrait of a cow. Accurate, unflattering, useful. Not all days end gently. A rumor spreads. Some lord somewhere doubled dues. People misunderstand somewhere as here because outrage travels without a map. A group gathers with sticks that want promotions. Your escort steps forward. You step sideways. The priest steps between. You speak in receipts. Last year 10 pennies, this year 10. The crowd mutters. You add, and 2 pennies postponed for the frost. The widow, who remembers better than you do, nods. The crowd spills its anger on the road and leaves. Later you buy beer for the priest and call it mutual forgiveness. If you're wondering whether you enjoy the job, sometimes. There is satisfaction in totals that balance and roads that end at home. There is justice in telling a bully his exemptions expired. There is mercy disguised as math. There is also the peculiar joy of catching a counterfeit coin by its ring, tapping it once, and watching a liar blink. You live for the small, honest sound. Do you ever bend the rules? Of course. The rules bend first. The duke's cousin delays. You shorten his deadline. The miller's granaries flood. You shift his due from coin to grain and sell it later for the lord because the lord likes money even when it's damp. The village needs a new well. You quietly reclassify a road repair to fund it because roads are just wells that stretched. Ethics in your field is the art of making practicality look like policy. Your tools improve. You adopt tally sticks, simple, brilliant, unforgeable. Cut notches for amounts, split the stick, give 1/2 to the payer, keep 1 for the lord. When they match later, truth appears like a rabbit from a hat, except nobody laughs because hats are taxed. You test coins on a touchstone and watch dishonest silver confess in smeared gray. You design a mobile chest with 3 locks, each key held by a different person so theft becomes a committee sport. Your job is equal parts finance and theater. The money must be safe, and it must look safe. The worst enemy isn't anger, it's despair. In a lean year, people pay because they always have. Then one day they look at you and see that paying doesn't bake bread. That look can puncture policy. You counter with visible fairness. Rebates recorded, bullies thwarted, priests made to file paperwork like mortals. You overcommunicate amounts, dates, reasons. You post the list on the church door, the tavern, the mill. People complain. Publicly, loudly, productively. That, strangely, is how trust grows. Sunlight, plus grumbling. There's romance, sort of. The innkeeper's daughter laughs at your jokes about numbers, which is either love or an early sign of sainthood. You walk her home after market nights while the village pretends not to notice because pretending is a community project. She teaches you which families need a gentler knock. You teach her which weights lie. You propose by buying her father a new set of scales. He says yes because the old ones favored the house. Years pass. Kings change and coins follow their faces. You survive 2 famines, 1 revolt you avoided by knowing who to refund, and an audit that would have killed a weaker quill. Your hair learns winter. Your ledger learns perspective. You add a column called mercies, unofficial, unreported, the mathematics of living together. The steward sees it once. He closes the book, pretends blindness, and mutters, "Carry on." You do. One last scene, because histories like to end with something that sounds like a verdict. A traveling judge comes through on circuit, the kind who carries law in a box and justice in his eyebrows. The village brings a complaint. The tax collector has been too soft. Another group counters, the tax collector has been too hard. The judge asks you to speak. You say, I have been exact where power protected itself and flexible where survival needed room. The judge says, so, correct. He bangs something because judges love percussion. The village disperses in two moods that cancel out. You go back to your plank. Is it a good job? Not for feelings. Is it useful? Absolutely. Every church bell, bridge plank, granary, and repaired road sings a little song with your name in the fourth verse, the verse nobody listens to but marches by. You are not loved. You are trusted on a good day, tolerated on most, blamed when it rains, and indispensable when the well runs dry. You are what keeps promises bought, soldiers paid, and winters navigable. You are mud-level infrastructure wearing boots. If you want this career, here's the real training. Learn weights by touch, coins by song, and faces by the way they approach a due date. Write everything as if a future enemy will read it, because he will. And sometimes the enemy is a younger version of you. Keep an extra column labeled weather. It explains almost everything. Know when a discount is mercy and when it is corruption. The difference is whether you can defend it out loud in front of the widow. And always carry a spare quill. A broken pen is an invitation to violence. Now close the ledger. Stamp the last receipt. Give the chicken to the children because they've adopted it and named it Shortfall. Head down the road while the village pretends not to be relieved you're leaving. Tomorrow there will be another well, another reeve with rocks, another priest with advice, another farmer with frost. You will arrive with the same plank and the same arithmetic, and the astonishing truth will repeat. Despite the scowls, people will pay, partly because they must, mostly because they live together, and living together costs. You are a medieval tax collector. You count so the rest can count on something. And that, in this century or any, is almost like love. Unromantic, underpaid, and quietly keeping the bridge from falling.